So you're probably aware that music's not just one note at a time. We have chords. Typically, these are called triads because typically a chord is 3 notes at least. Sometimes we'll have more. If you have less, it's kind of like you're either implying a chord or something kind of else. We'll talk about that if we have time. But here what I've done is I've stacked up these chords in thirds. Okay, so what's a third? Well, remember these were the notes of our major scale, right? I'm going to skip every other one. So 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. So we get C, E, and G. Those are our notes. And we put them all here. C, E, G. There's our chord. That should be pretty familiar for a lot of people. I just have them in both bass and treble clef here. But one thing everybody might not know is the idea of these descriptive names down here. And these are somewhat important. When we start stacking these up, we don't get the same type of chord here. So for example, here I have a C major chord. Play that all together, right? Sounds a little bit happy. Then the next one, minor. Yep, typically people know minor's kind of sad. E minor. F major has the same sort of brightness as the C chord, but at a different location. G major. A minor, then our second to last one is B diminished, and then kind of redundantly our C chord. It's not required that you end there. I just want to put that there. But these names describe the feeling. Hey there in chat, I'm Mira. These names describe the feeling of the chord, and I'm going to come back to that later. These are very important. Some of them are not so important. Our tonic is super important because to be tonic means that it feels like home, right? In fact, if I, play this section here, you're going to feel that when we get to that last chord, it's going to feel like home. Right? So once I get there, that last chord, I'll play it up here, right? Sounds pretty solid to end on. And if I were to just end on this, the B diminished chord doesn't quite sound finished, right? So to feel like a tonic is to feel like home. The next most important ones would probably be the dominant. The dominant is the one that is going to give us our central tension. So I can have our tonic and our dominant. That's going to really want to make us go back to home, our tonic. We'll talk about that more a little bit. Another important one is the subdominant. And fun fact, it's not called the subdominant because it's below the dominant. It's called the subdominant because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets us to a dominant, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets us to a subdominant. If you're studying these in music theory, you might have noticed, like me, why is the submediant above the mediant? Well, that's actually because we're not talking about above the starting. We're saying go from the tonic either up or go from the tonic down, right? So that's why 1, 2, 3 gets you to the mediant, and from here, tonic 1, 2, 3 gets you to the submediant. Again, if you're studying music theory, you definitely need to know these for your class, but if you just are kind of figuring out how things work, they're not so important in terms of their vocab, except for tonic and dominant. And the next most important one absolutely is the leading tone. So what I want to talk about here is we have this B to C or T do, if you're familiar with that system. And that one is going to really propel us back up to the octave. Right? It doesn't quite feel finished until we get to that octave, meaning 8 notes away from our starting note. So we're going to talk about that later when we get to tendency tones. But I just wanted to bring this up here, the basic idea of chords.